Hello, and welcome to the Consider Your Mind podcast. I'm your host, Eric King, and along with my co-host, Mino Pachan, we're here to talk about all things mental health. Let's get into it.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Consider Your Mind podcast, episode 22. Last week,
22, double deuce on it.
Last week we had a special guest, pretty much a licensed therapist that came on our show here, goes by the name of Courtney. We pretty much just talked about depression, and that's basically her specialty area. So if you want to go ahead and check that out, go ahead and feel free to go give that a listen. This week we got one that I was kind of anxious to learn about because it is, at least to me, one of the darker, more serious, scary symptoms that people may deal with, and that's psychosis and schizophrenia.
Yeah, man, heavily misunderstood.
Yes, and we see it portrayed in horror movies, just any movies that would bring you to heebie-jeebies, like you see the split personality, you see somebody physically change,
Yeah, man, we can just say it. We can use the C word, the real big C word, that's curse word on this show.
Right.
Crazy. Anytime you see a crazy person, what are they really talking about? Somebody who's a schizo, or again, psychosis, psycho, American Psycho,
Yep.
things like that. What do we think when we think of the Joker? Laughing randomly, hearing all this stuff, we think of him as a psycho or a schizo.
To me, I've always been curious about it. Like, my own anxiety would trigger making me think that maybe I'm schizophrenic, or even thinking I'm going through a psychosis, just whatever. And that's just my anxiety playing a trick on me, or everyone that has anxiety knows what I'm talking about, where your thought process just goes and you think about the worst possible scenario ever, and you think that's going to happen to you. So you're caught up in that cycle all the time. And psychosis, just give you a little quick overview. Again, I'm not a licensed specialist or anything like that. This is information I found just by Googling, just doing research myself.
Yeah, this is informational, not therapeutic. This is not therapy. This is informational.
So according to information I found out on Google, psychosis is a mental disorder characterized by a disconnection from reality. It may occur as a result of a psychotic illness, or as also known as schizophrenia. May be caused by a health condition as well, whether it's through medication or just drug use. Some of the symptoms that people may experience or may have, to deal with delusions, hallucinations, talking incoherently, agitation. A lot of things are going to fall into the similar situations and symptoms that you see across mental health in general as well. A lot of times with the treatments, at least from what I found, is going to be a combination of antipsychotics and medication with talk therapy as well. Usually, obviously, these are obviously diagnosed by a specialist. And that's pretty much just a quick overview of psychosis, at least what I found. If somebody out there that's listening is dealing with psychosis and has their own experience and would like to share, I would like to know, just what do you do to cope with it, and how do you look for signs of somebody that care about? How do you go about having a conversation, I guess you could say. But during just looking up on what psychosis is, I came across an article. I believe it was Apple News or something like that.
Shout out to Apple News. Good stuff.
Right. And the story is based on a young lady named Kylie Letty. Talks about her sister, who unfortunately took her life due to the end result of being diagnosed with schizophrenia.
See, and that's why we're doing this show too, man. Just to pause right there for a second, because you mentioned even too the fear of being diagnosed. This is something like, it's an actual, like, a phobia of ours. It's become such a stigma, such a stereotype. Like, we think like it's this death sentence, so that way your brain even uses it as a weapon against you. Oh, well, if you're schizo, if you're diagnosed and you're a schizo, or you're diagnosed as a psycho and get committed or whatever, you're a crazy person, then your life is over. Like, it's such a deep thing. It's like the thing that you want to get help for is the very thing that you really are afraid of.
Right.
At the same time, man. So it's wild to think about.
Yeah, man. And from her perspective, she pretty much wrote a book pretty much about her experience and what it was like for her family to go through that, and to see somebody you love really actually change, like, to a new person. And there was a lot of things that led up to her situation, and so much her sister had a traumatic head injury that seems to be the stem of everything. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
she got it checked out and everything, and I'm summing up her story. Obviously, there's more details to it, but the whole gist of it started from that. And the first time she went home after her incident, she in her words said that that's the first time her mom feared for her life. Seeing, like, someone that would 1 minute laugh and joke with you and money turn into somebody else. So these like anger or arguments turn into you know, physical violence.
Altercations.
Yeah, and it just kept growing where she would just flip and just become a new person pretty much. And she had other medical issues that kind of could have played a part with it. They said that later on her sister, Kate, is the one that's going through the psychotic breaks. And I guess she was diagnosed with the hormonal disorder. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but that's abbreviations were PCOS.
PCOS. Okay.
And pretty much, I guess she had that diagnosis that they felt it could have played. It could be a hormonal imbalance or something like that that played a role in that her being schizophrenia as well. And
Kind of environmental factors, man. Outside things come in.
yeah, and it's everything that would, at least from my experience of what I've seen people talk about with schizophrenia, is them not really being in touch in reality. They're not aware of their behaviors, and they're just kind of in their own world. And no matter what you try to say to them or something, it's not clicking. And it's unfortunate because you really want to help these people, and it's at times you're gonna feel helpless, especially with somebody like your sister in her case. Everything building up, the injuries, the medical issues, the personality changes to somebody that she didn't
like
know.
A perfect storm.
Yeah, and at the end result, became too much, and her sister ended up taking her own life. And it's it's unfortunate, but it's a crazy thing for someone to go through, and I can't even imagine just dealing with that on a day to day, And I don't know. That's, to me, I couldn't really find like, there's a lot of stories out there with people with schizophrenia, and a lot of it for me, I couldn't look at much because it would trigger my anxiety, and even though I want to learn about it, it's just so much. I had to just find something quick to talk about, and
No, I get that, man. Thank you for doing what you can, man, because that's the thing people don't understand too. We're learning as we do this as well, and so some of the things we learn, man, it's not pretty. Some of the things can hit really, really close to home. So that's kind of the whole point of again, these last episodes, kind of the first set of episodes. Again, we're on episode 22 right now, so shout out to all of our supporters for getting us this far. We really do appreciate it. But we've kind of gone on a theme of talking about things that we know that other people are dealing with, and larger mental health and mental illness issues, just so that we can make it more relatable and reach out to people and let them know that, hey, there are other people going through this as well. And because one of the tricks of this, and what really is the tragedy, with mental health, is the isolating factor of it. You think it's just you feel so alone. So episodes like this are very special to us, and I hope they are to you, because we just want to encourage people out there, hey, you're not alone. And one of the things I found out about schizophrenia is similar to bipolar. We did an episode, I believe our episode 20 was on bipolar disorder, kind of what mania is to bipolar, psychosis is to schizophrenia. So, in order to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, you have to, have gone through a psychotic episode, of some sort. So, and there's so much to learn about it. And one of the things that I learned about it, was that it's a lot more common than we think. It's a whole lot more common. So there's so many myths around it. There's so many things when I was looking at this episode reminded me of other episodes when we did our first interview with a licensed therapist, hypnotherapist Rupert Missick, on one of our earlier episodes. It was talked about debunking the myths of hypnosis. Can somebody, like with all those Get Out movies with the, teacup and all that stuff, because of the way it's presented to us, we could be scared even of a type of treatment. And so similar to this, we're literally scared, and we have myths about, what it means to be diagnosed with schizophrenia or be, in a state of psychosis. So it affects 1 in every 100 people. So it's a lot more common than you think. 1%, 1 out of every 100, and that's like 23 million people worldwide are diagnosed with it. But one thing that I found, which is, I'm glad we're doing this episode, is that, it has a very high non-compliance rate. So there's about 50% of people out there that aren't getting the treatment that they need. The people that have have schizophrenia, but, half of the people out there literally aren't seeking treatment, so they are not following up with it because it's scary to face it. In order to do treatment for this thing, you have to admit that you have, schizophrenia. And just that, like, as you read with the article just a minute ago, that can drive people over the edge. So, it's a serious thing, but people out there, you're not alone with it. But one of the things that we have to think of it like it's a, mental illness. It's not one of those things where, it just kind of goes away, if you just leave it alone. Hey, just let them go through what they're going. We don't talk about Bruno, shout out to all the Encanto fans out there. No, that's not going to help, because those psychotic episodes, can sometimes last, for the rest of a certain person's life. So one of the things about schizophrenia, too, is basically the basic definition is it's a serious mental disorder in which people interrupt reality abnormally. So the actual reality is interrupted by this. It's a debilitating thing. So there's a spectrum of it, like with everything. There's higher functioning people that have schizophrenia than others, just like with anything else. And there are positive and negative symptoms and syndromes of it. But in order to get the basic just rundown of how you would be diagnosed with this, is if you have to meet 4 basic criteria, similar to the episode I did with bipolar, how there's certain things you have to hit. A certain amount of symptoms out of a certain amount for a certain amount of time. So the 4 criteria for you to be diagnosed with schizophrenia is, again, hallucination. So you experience hallucination, whether it be auditory or visually. Those are the most common. But also tactile, you can feel something crawling on you, things like that. But most of the time it's, audio-visual hallucinations, things that aren't there. Your brain is perceiving and making you, perceive a reality that it isn't in fact, there. And so delusions as well. So beliefs that just aren't real or aren't plausible to be real. Because we can all be kind of delusional, if you're, we've come from the sports world. I'm the greatest goalie ever. I'm the best, You feel what I'm saying? Hey, know where to hype yourself up. I'm about to lift this. I'm the strongest. I'm the baddest. We do that from time to time. But I'm talking about if somebody is delusional, to a sense, a belief that's literally not plausible. It's me coming up to you, Mino. Hey, man, take that chip out of my head. I know you work for the CIA, man. I already know the jig is up, bro. I don't appreciate it. But stop controlling my thoughts.
Yeah, that's wild.
You know what I'm saying? It's just something that's not plausible. I'm like, yo, I don't believe you work for the CIA. I don't believe I was abducted, probed, you know what I'm saying?
What I want to know from specialists is if that were to happen to somebody, should that person play along or be like, you crazy, I don't know what you're talking about? Like, I really want to know, because it's like, because it could trigger something else, and you might end up find yourself in a messed up situation.
Hey, man.
Where you have to make life or death situations.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because if someone is freaking out,
like, hey, my original idea was just to get an expert on. So, hey, we're not done, interviewing people. Hopefully we can get a, similar to how we did with, shout out to Courtney Dollins in our last episode on depression. Hopefully we can get a specialist to, go deeper into it, because those are questions to ask. Our whole thing is always, people, we're not the specialists. This is educational, not therapy. We tell you to direct the people to the mental health. We're telling you to direct them to so they can answer deeper questions like that. Because,
we're just talking about certain topics to hope to create a conversation around it, and the conversation will always continue. So when you have a story, if you have a story or an experience you want to share, please contact us. Let us know. We'll maybe get you on the podcast and have a conversation with you, and see, what you have done to cope with whatever it is you're dealing with, and, has it worked for others? And I'm sure people want to hear from you, so let us know.
For real, for real. So again, grandiose thinking too. I'm the Queen of England and things that just aren't plausible. This homeless lady comes up to you and tells you that, like, ma'am, this is just not feasible. But it's debilitating because they literally can't break themselves out of it. It's not a funny, games type of thing, actually. And then also disorganized thinking. So again, sometimes I think the stereotype is like that movie Split, which was a pretty decent movie actually, where you have all these different personalities, split personality disorder.
When that movie
they
come
think
out?
that's what be. It came out quite a few years ago. It was with the guy that plays like the young Professor X.
Is that on Netflix?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Split. So like the M. Night Shyamalan guy. They did a recent one where it combined, like the first movie was Unbreakable, then it was Split, and then they had the last one that happened was Glass, and it had Samuel L. Jackson in it too.
Okay.
But it was a really good movie, Split, but he had literally different personality. Like they would trigger this light and somebody else would come out of him. He had like 12 people. So again, that's how we really are. That's what we're shown as being like a schizophrenic, split personalities. But no, the fact is they're not, becoming different people. If you have schizophrenia, it's literally you can hear conversations that don't even have anything to do with you. This is, again, it's hurtful to people. You can really, your brain can make you perceive people in the room that necessarily aren't there. And if you're trying to study for a test, if you're any type of, you can't live life like that. If you truly think people are in the room, that you can't like interact with and stuff. It's so it is to be taken seriously. So again, hallucinations, delusions, disorganized thinking, so that they're going from one thing to the next. So, like, again, it's not different personalities, but you can have a conversation with somebody, but their words, they can even make up words or use a word inappropriately to get this conversation going and keep on at it. But it's so disconnected from actual reality. That one word doesn't have anything to do with the next, or one conversation. So you can have, that person literally can look like the C word, crazy. When you're talking
Kind of like
to
when
them.
someone's speaking, they're like having a stroke, how they may stumble across the words or say something that doesn't make sense.
Yep. Things aren't, going from one thing to the next linear. They like to have a conversation, but again, oftentimes they lose friends and things like that because they can't, they can't literally talk, correctly. And then also the negative symptoms, they call them. So this is, those positive symptoms are, again, actively things that you're seeing, doing, manic behaviors, psychotic behaviors, episodes like that. That's, kind of active. But the negative ones are those ones where people look removed. Those are when, like, people, like, they say go catatonic, or like, people just stare off in the distance, or don't make eye contact. They literally shut down. That's a psychotic episode as well. And so in order to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, you have to have two of those four. You have to have two of those four, and you have to have it for at least 30 days. And it can't be due to other illnesses. Again, I went over this in the bipolar episode 20. It can't be due to other, substance abuses, things like that, substances that can trigger the psychotic episodes, medication, other medical illnesses, or other diagnoses. Maybe if you're going through deep depression, if you're going through a deep depression, well, hey, that can contribute an episode of psychosis. That doesn't necessarily mean you're schizophrenic. So, again, this is why it's very important. Again, we always defer you to the medical professionals.
And if we're wrong, please correct us. We'd like to know, too. We're trying to learn.
Hey, this is all Google.
We're trying to
we
learn
put our
along
links in the
with you,
description box.
so.
Again, we put our links in the description box. And then so again, a final diagnosis, people would monitor you after that. And then the real, if there's no remission after 6 months, that's when, again, it kind of elevates. So again, not just necessarily cognitive behavioral therapy, but having to see a psychiatrist and medications. And there are lots of medications, so that's the hope part of this. Hey, before we get any further, there are lots of medications and medical advances to help people deal with this, and so you can live a normal and productive life, and still have a good life. Now, again, there's no cure. Again, that's the thing. It's a chronic illness, and it has a genetic component that's a lot stronger, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Hereditary component than a lot of other conditions, but there is still hope. There's, it's not a death sentence, and that's what we want to do here today. Give people hope. Hey, it's not a death sentence. There are people that overcome this. The research and things that we're looking at actually were produced, and sometimes, written by people that are, overcoming, this condition. One guy put it, schizophrenia is what I have. It's not who I am. So, and I really I like that theme. I was like, yeah, you're dealing with it. We're all going through something and dealing with something, and it's just is one of those things um, that people deal with, and that a lot of people deal with. Again, 1 in 100 people. Think about that. That's 1%. That's a lot of people out here. So definitely not just you all. And one of the things that's was interesting too. Like, there's a lot of factors. What causes it? Like, again, if it was that easy, everybody would avoid it. But there's, environmental and genetic factors that trigger these things, because it affects about 1% of the population. Again, 1 out of 100. But it really is a genetic. There's genetic predispositions to this, unfortunately. So let's say if you have a twin, if you have an identical twin, if he had if he's diagnosed with schizophrenia, you have a 50% chance of being also schizophrenic. So like that's, again, it goes from 1% in the general population to all of a sudden 50% if you have an identical twin. Genetically, something in you all has the same thing predisposed to it. If you have a sibling that has it, so just a regular sibling, not a twin, identical twin, or a parent, then it's a 10% chance. If both of your parents have, diagnosed with schizophrenia, then you have a 40% chance. So there's a strong, again, genetic, link with that. And some other research too, which was, interesting. And please do your own research on this, people. But one factor that had to do with it too was seasonal effect. There are people born in the months like winter and spring have a higher rate of being diagnosed with schizophrenia, and they say maybe it has to do with something that's released in the environment during those months. Like it's like, again, something to research. Again, is burgeoning to kind of narrow this stuff down. But also, again, something called ACE, adverse childhood experiences, can trigger that. Low birth weight or malnutrition can trigger high rates of that. So any type of prenatal compromise or stress, the developing brain of a child is very sensitive, and it can really, trigger off episodes of psychosis that can, evolve into, schizophrenia. One of the episodes that you talked about, our early episode was, when you tried marijuana for the first time when you were, real young, and it, set off something in you. There's a lot of research when I was doing this to kind of support that when you try certain substances, mind-altering substances, while your brain is still developing, it can trigger those things. Because again, it's a combination of it being in the genes and not being as uncommon as you think, and then an environmental factor that goes ahead and tips that over the edge. So substances like cannabis, other hallucinogens. Obviously, we think of LSD, acid, shrooms, peyote, MDMA, Molly, all that stuff, as well as other stimulants as well. All these things, we're playing fast and loose and having fun partying out here, but there's people that have genetic predispositions, so that, hey, they don't just come back from the party, they don't come down from the high the same. So it was something I'm glad we're covering. Glad I got to delve into and really confront myself about how I look at people who are diagnosed with that, or people I see with that. There was one guy in an interview I was watching when he had to confront himself, like, how do our reactions to people. So a woman comes up to me, a homeless woman in the street, like, comes up to me and says, I think I'm going to, I think I need help, or I'm going to kill myself. The nature, what we're taught to do is, stay with that person, call 911, stay with them until 911 comes and gets some help. But if that, same lady came up to you and said, are you the king of England? I am your queen. We should take over the like, that's that same person probably having the same diagnosis, going through a schizophrenic or psychotic episode that needs the same help as that other person. But we're taught to avoid that person. They're gonna start asking us for money sooner, begging us. Like, we're taught to really shun people, and that could just use some help. There's help out there for them, just like there is for anybody else. But it was definitely an interesting topic. Got my noodle buzzing, and it kind of made me confront some things in myself. Like, wow, when I talk about, something being crazy or people being crazy, and the way I've looked at crazy people with quotes, who am I really talking about? Schizophrenic, schizos, as we call them, or people going through psychotic episodes, psychos. And so if the way that I'm thinking, I know there's a lot of other people that are thinking like that, and that's really, that's really done a lot to isolate people, to not get the help they need or seek it out in the first place, or if, God forbid, they get that diagnosis, now that could, tip them over the edge to do something else. It reminds me a little bit, I was watching a little documentary on Magic Johnson. Everybody knows who that is, and what he's known for, obviously, like people call him the greatest point guard of all time, top basketball player, all that stuff. But we know him, he has AIDS. If you're from my generation, it was after he really stopped playing basketball. And what it kind of goes back to his story is he became an ambassador and a pioneer for people to go get help, because it went from being a death sentence. He took it from being, no, I have this, but it doesn't have me type of thing. And so I think I'm so glad in the mental health space there are people out there who are putting forth similar efforts to say, just because you're going through this right now, or just because, hey, this is something that you were, born this way, that you have to battle, you can still have a good life. And there's always help, man. There's people out there trying to help you, man. We bring them on the show even. Shout out again to Courtney for coming on the show. Shout out to Rupert for coming on the show. Yeah, man, shout out to your boy James Jerry for coming on. There's people out here that, ready, willing, and able to hear you out, hear your story, and not just dismiss you, as crazy. And shout out to all the universities, all the stories I heard, as you probably did in your research too. A lot of the times that people get help and get diagnosed and start reaching out around college. And there are a lot of on-campus resources to help people start, getting that help early. And again, an interesting thing too about schizophrenia, it affects men and women at different times a little bit. So for men, it can start, its onset around, the 16, 17, 18, 19, like so later, teens in the early 20s, as opposed to women. That's when it kind of starts for them, early 20s going into their early 30s, So they say women mature faster than men, but I guess this not in this case. We get to it a little bit quicker.
Yeah, man, it's like schizophrenia and psychosis can be very scary things to deal with. If you deal with that, please let us know, how long you've been dealing, fighting, those symptoms, and, we just want to hear from you guys. Maybe it could help other people that's actually going through it from day to day as well. And me as a friend, maybe I have a friend that's going through it. I don't know how to be the friend when they're having their episodes. I don't know how it works. I would like to know. So you guys do deal with that schizophrenia or psychosis in your lives, whether it's people you know or love, speak up. Let us know. We want to hear from you.
Yeah, for real. Because that's going to bust down a lot of myths about people. Because one of the, again, common misconception, completely inverted. They think that, people who are diagnosed with schizophrenia or are going through psychosis, that they're dangerous, that these are dangerous people. This is, again, the villain. This is the Joker. This is, but no, this is actually, no, most of the times those people they've experienced traumatic events. They're more likely to have been the victim, of violence, been the victim of trauma. That's what got them in there. So it's the complete opposite,
Yeah, I mean that's what we got to cover for psychosis and schizophrenia. Yeah, man, we do want to get into the next part of the show here. Just get something off my chest, and the past 2 weeks have been.
It's been a lot.
It's been a lot. It's been a lot of unnecessary things. We're talking about the elementary school shooting down in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Prayers and everything goes out to the families that were involved.
Absolutely.
This one kind of did it for me, man, because it's kids. It's not an innocent standby. It's not a wrong place, wrong time. No, they're at school. School, where it's supposed to be the safest place, where and that's where kids go to learn, become human beings. You know what I mean? And For somebody to just walk up in there and just shoot at random, it doesn't sit well with me. And me being a gun owner, and I got my conceals to carry, everything like that. It's just
We legal out here.
and it's I would give it that up. I would give up my right to carry a gun or own a gun if not overnight, but if somehow we could stop these reckless killings, dude. Like, and then a week before that, and we got Buffalo.
Went to a supermarket.
Just people doing their daily routine, stopping at the grocery store to get some food, and you get gunned down. And then you got churchgoers in the Asian community getting gunned down. And in the elementary school, it's what does it take? I don't have the answers. I'd really like to know, because the stats that they put out there, it's ridiculous.
It's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing.
We should be embarrassed as Americans, bro. Period.
It's everyone's so caught up in wanting to be tough, and that's not tough. That's weakness. Anybody could pull a trigger. It's cowardly. I'm sorry. It's why do I have a gun then? Because there's people out there I don't really trust. With everything that's going on, you have to protect yourself.
And sometimes the police are busy. Okay.
Well,
we saw that in Minneapolis with the George Floyd riots. Police were occupied. They had some things to do. So
yeah, it's just, I don't know, man. Other countries don't have these issues. You know what I mean?
Not to say nothing bad ever happens again. Things happen.
Right, but this is something that's preventable.
Norway years ago.
This is something something can be done. Like, we can do something about it, but we don't. And I'm mad and upset about it, because I know it's just a part of me just knows that no one cares enough to even do anything about it.
Yeah.
Like
It's
the people in
fake
charge.
outrage.
Yeah, the people in charge that can make the decisions to do so won't do it. So it makes me just be like, what's the point of me to get overworked up? If they don't care, why should I, right? Or I should continue talking. It's been talked about. The bill is sitting there in the House.
The people whose job it is, quote unquote, to care about this stuff don't do anything. Then it's like, it does dishearten you. Like,
yeah, it's messed up, because it's like, we love our guns that much. If there was no guns, there could still be some type of massacre. Yes, I get that. You know what I mean? But this is not going to stop everything. But this is like the number one thing. What they say, over 27 mass shootings is only half a year.
sick, man. It's embarrassing. It's just sick.
So those numbers, like, you tell me they can be one almost every week. Like, I don't know. It just bugs me so much. Because it's like, I don't have kids, but I can only imagine, a lot of things happen through kids. A lot of the, kids hold that magic of life. When you speak to a kid, you see their eyes light up when you tell them, oh, how does that happen? You tell them things that we already know, like, oh, the light turns on because of the switch and this, and their eyes light up. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, what else? Like, everything's new to them. And it's that, it's that experience for the kids be like, that's what drives them to create things that we use down today. Somebody was brave enough to say, what if there's a rectangle thing that can hold everywhere and I could make phone calls from it? It starts from a kid's thought, like, that'd be cool to do this and that.
Imagination.
Yeah, their imagination.
All that potential.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, to see, like, Steve Kerr, the coach for the Golden
State Warriors. Shout out to Steve
Warriors.
Kerr, former Chicago Bull.
What he said was right. It was right. I felt every single word he said. I agree with everything he said. Like, straight to the point. When we're gonna do something. the bills that have been passed has been sitting in the House for 2 years and not being voted on. They won't even move it to a vote. Why? You know? And yeah, people say armed teachers, but then it's like, it's a school. I don't want a child to go to a place where it's a gun that you know that's there.
You talk about just missing the point. People just
completely
missing the point.
Yeah, more now you know a teacher's armed, has a gun. What if a student walks in there, gets in a little scuffle, don't like, but they know that teacher has a gun? You know, I'm putting a teacher in a situation. You know, when you take the gun out of the air, and then it's just old school fighting, fist, cool,
fisticuffs, as they say.
Yeah, but but it's like, man, and it's not even if they do something like now. This is why I have no hope, because like, you got the black market, people on the streets. It's gonna be easy.
Yeah, man. There's the amount of guns that are out there. There's so much money invested in guns. That's why there's so much money invested in guns, in the sale of guns. Like, it's an economy for real. I'm down here in St. Louis, Missouri, bro. Like, there's gun shows every month. Like, it's advertised gun show like every month.
I mean, it's like, don't get me wrong.
Praise the Lord and pass the ammunition for real. Like
don't get me wrong. I like shooting guns. It's
It's
just fun.
I do too.
You know?
Hey, don't get me wrong. Hey, we're not pacifists over there. Don't get it twisted now. Don't
but
run
if
up.
it means that if they say guns are banned, you're not allowed to. Okay, cool.
Man, I swear I would. Yeah,
I'm not gonna die without it. Now that I know if I get in an altercation somewhere, I have a chance, an equal chance of fighting. You know, like, I don't need to worry about someone pulling a gun, but then they can still bring a knife. But I know they don't got a gun. I have a fair chance to fight. You know,
I said it like this to somebody, like, you know, a long time ago that I was working, you know, pretty good gun enthusiast, good old boy. And I said, you know, I kind of view it like, you know, like my license, like my driver's license. Like, I have a Class D license, a regular driver's license. I can drive, you know, a regular car. I can drive an SUV. But after a certain tonnage, like, I can't just hop in a semi truck and drive it. I gotta get a license. I get like a special training and stuff for that. I'm not saying, hey, you could want what you want, get any gun you want, but shouldn't there be different classes of guns and like different trainings you should have to have in order to get a certain one and use it? Like, I'm just saying, like a military guy coming out the military, extra trained and all type of firearms, like, he's a higher level of like gun owner than I think I would be. You know, just like the same way if he came out like driving trucks and semis and all these dump trucks and all this stuff, different, you know, forklifts, has all this driving training. Well then, hey, I think it's just the same way, you know.
Yeah, but regardless of all
that's just how it is, like, for me. But again, that creates barriers to entry, less sales, less, you know, there's no incentive, you know, to do that.
Like,
but I go back to what my dad would like tell me though. If you want a better world, you need better people. At the end of the day, if you want a better world, you need better people. You know, you can try to mask it any way we want. Yo, the guns ain't the problem. Like, you know, people kill people at the end of the day. And we're talking about actual human beings, actual people. Again, in this case, you know, one of the cases especially, a very young man, but, you know, a man nonetheless, you know, somebody that's a responsible, free, moral agent. And we've done a whole episode about, you know, breaking down stereotypes about just dismissing people as crazy, you know, playing around with mental illness and real type of things. And I don't ever want that to be used as an excuse or sometimes to obfuscate the conversation, you know, as a way to put a red herring out there in order to really, you know, not talk about what we need to talk about. They'll bring up mental health in times like this. Now all of a sudden it becomes, you know, so important. Now it becomes, well, what was his mental health like? Was he dead and he died? No.
See,
now all of a sudden you want to talk about that. I don't appreciate that after, you know, bodies have already been buried.
I have my concealed carry. I deal with mental health.
Yeah, like,
you know, it's like it doesn't matter what they do. As long as there's guns around, someone's going to find a way how to get it and sell it and whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on top of that, it's not going to do anything because as long as there's guns, it's just easy. Someone's just going to get shot.
Where there's demand, someone will supply. Absolutely.
And it's like,
so we're not trying to be delusional on this show. Not one of the symptoms of schizophrenia. Right. We're not delusional. We live in this world.
Think of how much money is spent on things that destroy people.
Mm-hmm. Them guns are not cheap. You been to a gun store, people?
We have nuclear bombs for what? This is the only planet we have right now. As of right now, there's no other planet that has life forms that we know of. And we want to have something that blows the thing that we live in 10,000 times over. For what?
To say, yeah, just
when that could have been resources used into maybe food in people's mouths, maybe better water systems in countries that don't have the best water when everything is from the earth anyway. It should be free. But whatever, you know, it's.
You know what? I think there's an answer to this, and in order to wrap this show up, I think we need it. We're moving away from the C word, the crazy word. We're gonna call things what they are. Like there's our English people, our English. No, and I love like English slang and people in the UK and stuff like that, or also my people in the islands. They say mad. You're mad. MAD. And that was what they called it back in the day in terms of this nuclear thing. MAD, mutually assured destruction. That's the answer. Because people mad, man. You're mad. That's what this is. This is madness, man. This is madness.
We got a chance to live in a beautiful world, and yet we like to destroy things. But it's what it is.
So
it
hey,
is
people
what
out
it is,
there,
man.
don't be mad, people, because we ain't mad. We living. Hopefully, we said something out here to inform you guys. This is a real world. We live in it, so we don't try to get off the beaten path too much. We try to keep the main thing. But this is real life, and we're living it with you. And we just want to let you know that you're not alone in any struggle that you're going through. And we hope that you can use this platform, and by you listening, this enables you or somebody you know that you share it with to go ahead and get the help that they need so they can live the best life that they can live. Anything else, Mino?
No, that's it. I need to.
I know it's a lot, man. People, hey, heavy couple of weeks, man. But hey, we still here with y'all. And on that note, we will see you next week. Peace.